Welcome to the Holding Time podcast, where we share inspiring stories from remarkable mothers who participated in the Holding Time project in Bradford. Each episode, we explore their unique breastfeeding stories, the highs, the lows, the challenges and the triumphs. Whether you're expecting, a new parent, or simply curious, we invite you to hear from these resilient warrior women as they share their experiences. Find out more at holdingtime.org.
I'm Alison. I've got a 7-month-old baby girl who I'm still breastfeeding at the moment, and I've also got a 2.5-year-old little girl.
How well prepared would you say that you were for breastfeeding? It's always something I like to ask people, like, were you breastfed? Did you know much about breastfeeding before you had a baby? Did you know much about motherhood?
In my work working with children, I think I felt like I knew a lot about motherhood, but no, I didn't. And I think I just assumed breastfeeding would be easy. My sister had had children about 10 years before I did, but her breastfeeding journey was really easy. And I hadn't had any people around me that had difficult journeys. So I just assumed it would be, easy peasy breastfeeding. And so, yeah, I think I was just quite naive, really. And I think that they don't want to promote that people find it difficult because they don't want to put you off because of all the benefits of breastfeeding. And I was really keen to breastfeed. So I thought, yes, I'm going to do this. But actually, when it came to it, it was really, really difficult for me. So I was underprepared. And I found at the beginning that I had a lot of people coming out to see me. This was with my first daughter, who would say, oh, the latch is good, it looks fine. And I was thinking, I'm in so much pain and I don't understand why this isn't working. And you just kind of feel lost and like, why is my body failing me? And I think that initial lack of support right at the beginning and people saying, oh, you're doing well, it was really tricky.
Would you say that's the first time you felt like your body let you down? You said you felt like your body was failing you. I've heard women say that before, and quite often I've noticed that's something that women mention when they've had trouble getting pregnant or when they've had other experiences of like their body just not doing what it's supposed to do. Or was that the first time you really felt like, oh, this is supposed to be easy, but this isn't easy for me?
I think I'd always struggled with like my weight and things like that. So I think sometimes my body and my brain didn't always match up. So I felt like with breastfeeding, it was another thing, that kind of thing. And also with the birth, I'd planned a home birth and I did have a home birth, but it became quite a frantic last minute rush because they felt the baby was stuck and they'd called an ambulance, had the home birth midwives. So there was ambulance outside my house. It was likely that I was going to be transferred into hospital. I felt quite anxious. And at the time, I think I was feeling like my body's let me down. She's gotten stuck. I thought I'd be able to birth this baby. And in the end, I did push her out, stood near the fireplace. But there was the ambulance aside and it did feel very tense and worrying for a while until she came. And then we went into hospital. I needed some stitches. So that's why we were transferred in after the birth to my first daughter. And I think I just felt like a little bit like I'd failed in that first birth. So I think that started off my journey not so good. And also because we were at home, I was in skin to skin with baby after she was born for a short time, but there was a pressure to get in that ambulance and get to the hospital and kind of use that resource that had been waiting outside. They said, oh, don't feed her, don't breastfeed her, we'll do that when you get to the hospital. So I think kind of missing that skin to skin, it was a very brief time. And then when I got into hospital, I was being given my sutures as I was given my first breastfeeding lesson and I was on gas and air. So it felt like not the best circumstances to start that journey. And I felt like I didn't feel in control of my body. And I think the brain and body, I was just stressed. So it didn't start off on the way it should have really. So I think, that's perhaps why I say my body felt like it failed me because it kind of didn't start off on the right foot. And then I was very naive. So things like pumping, I'd never heard about pumping and expressing. I didn't understand the sort of supply and demand need for breastfeeding. So I was just, a bit lost in the beginning. And I think that and me feeling like I'd failed a little bit, that added to the stress and it not working out so great at the beginning.
Statistically, breastfeeding is the best thing for your baby and vaginal birth is the best thing for your baby. But there's also this whole other pushback against that, which is about whether or not that's setting women up to fail and whether it's making women feel worse about, maybe a birth where they have a healthy baby. But I suppose one of the problems is that the NHS being driven by best practice and research often wants what they know is statistically the best thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that can lead to things maybe being rather target driven. And I think in the Ockenden report that came up, that women were being left in labour too long and women weren't being given C-sections when they needed them. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it sounds like in your case they were very much on it and like really trying to help you. But all that preparation around natural birth can sometimes mean that the actual kind of chaos of birth can leave you feeling like it went wrong. And yet I'm not sure there is, I mean, there probably is a right, isn't there? It's like one of those ecstatic births where you're like screaming with joy. And I've met people who had births like that, but it is quite unusual, I think.
Yeah. I think it's all about having choices, isn't it? And being informed. And I think the NHS, as you say, kind of led by, we're going to let you go to this date, or we think this is best for you. And it's kind of, targets. Whereas it's about, for me, it was about feeling in control of my birth. And I think because of the home birth, I thought I made that decision to have a home birth, but then things were going awry and people were making decisions and sort of, we're going to have to go in. I just felt like I was out of control. And I think for my second birth, this is how I'm going to do it, because I want to feel like I own it and I am in control of my body and we're doing it this way. So I kind of was having a much more hands-off birth, because I feel like with my first, my labour was progressing well, but then the team arrived and that's when things slowed down. So I think I'm quite a not very confident person. I feel like I felt like I was being watched when I was giving, in labour. So I think that stopped things flowing so well. So this time I started off realising I was in labour about 10:30 at night, and I didn't even tell my partner. I just sort of thought, right, I'm going to go to bed and try and go to sleep and try and be calm. And I was really calm and was able to go to sleep. And then at 4 a.m. my waters broke and I was up from that point. I didn't even wake anybody up, and I kind of laboured on my own, just another 45 minutes or an hour. And I woke my partner up, and then within 20 minutes she was here, and I birthed her pretty much on my own in the living room and delivered her myself. My partner was in the next room filling up the birth pool, but I was thinking, we're not going to need that. There's not going to be time. And having that experience where I was in control of that, it helped me feel confident, like I'd not failed. I'd done it how I wanted to do it. And I'd done a lot of research about freebirthing, and because what had happened was I was planning to have the home birth team there, but I'd called up and said, I'm in labour, just to make you aware. And they wouldn't send anybody out because I was 36 weeks and 6 days. So I was 1 day off of term, which it's not their policy to send everybody out. So I said, well, thanks, but I'm going to have a home birth and that's what I'm going to do. So they then said, we'll call the team and see if they can send somebody out. But they said, ring an ambulance. And I said, I'm not going to have an ambulance there, because I knew that would just be causing, lights would be on, pressure. So they called back later, but baby had already been born. They wouldn't have got there anyway. But I think part of that was an unconscious decision to not have people around, because I felt kind of that had put me off last time, and it made my labour longer, whereas this was a 6-7 hour labour and baby was here and she was fine. So it was like yes, I did it this time. I was able to do it. She didn't get stuck. I felt quite confident. I was on my living room floor saying, I can do this, you can do this. I knew my partner was there. I'd done a free birthing course, so I knew about different things that could go wrong. And I know the odds of that is quite scary for some people. I felt like they were quite small, and I was aware of what to do when we could call an ambulance if we needed. But they are minute, the chances of things going wrong. So I felt quite confident. And baby just arrived and it was fine. So I think that this time it's been a different journey, because I felt that it wasn't that stressed and I did it and my body didn't fail me. But with my first daughter, the infant feeding team concluded that I didn't have sufficient breast tissue to breastfeed, and that's why my journey had been really difficult as well. So it was kind of something that was out of my control. With her, I was only able to breastfeed about 25% of the milk that she needed, whereas this time it's been much more like 50% I've been able to do myself. We had a bit of an interesting journey compared to others in that we didn't want to use formula. We felt that breast milk was best. We actually have used donor milk because we're also vegan. And we didn't want to use cow's milk formula because our family, that's, not ethically not something that we were as comfortable with. If other people do that, that's absolutely fine in their choice. But we wanted to use breast milk. So that's something else that we've done, is used other mothers' breast milk to make sure the babies are fed.
This is remarkable. I mean, first of all, I think you're the first person I've ever met that's free birthed. I don't think I've ever met anyone that Oh, no. My friend Jen, she had a midwife there and she was in a birth pool. And she wanted the kind of birth that you're describing as second birth to be. Mm-hmm. This was her first birth. And I always remember her saying to me, giving birth's like doing a poo, and you don't really want people watching you. It doesn't help. And she said at the moment when she really felt like she wanted to push, she got out of the pool and she went to be on her own, and they let her be on her own, and then her partner went up to her and he was able to catch the baby. I mean, I just want to know that moment that, I know this isn't breastfeeding, but it's really connected, because just sort of instinctively I asked you that question about your body failing you, and then it's like all this stuff. It's amazing, because I detected something in that comment, and what's so incredible to me is that you took what was probably quite a disempowering experience in your minds, and you'd completely flipped it. And it's I think often the second child is really different, but this is like so radically different. The description of having your sutures done while doing your breastfeeding lesson, that's...
Yeah, and I've been told...
so tragic. Like,
I've gone
why? Why do that to someone? Why put them through that? They've just given birth. Why ask them to try to learn a totally new, difficult skill while having stitches? That's a very time poor a situation where they've thought that you're way more capable than you would have been in that situation. And
I'd come from home, you know, the home environment, been whisked in an ambulance, and then I was told, you know, the midwife that had been there at the home birth would do the sutures, and it would be on the midwife-led unit, so it'd be quiet and it's dark. But actually, there was no room when we got there. It was on the labour ward. I could hear women in labour having a difficult time, and then the bright lights were on, and I was being stitched by two different. It wasn't kind of how it had been sold. And it wasn't the best start. That I, you know, completely agree. I think that's part of why, we didn't start off on a good foot. And then everyone was just saying, oh, you're doing really well with it. But I could tell I wasn't. And baby's weight was dropping. We got admitted to hospital on day 8 for really significant weight loss. And she kept dropping weight even then. So we were having sort of every day midwives were coming out to weigh her for, I think, the first 2 or 3, 4 weeks of her life. And then that dropped down. But it's a lot of pressure, isn't it? That kind of intensity.
When was she readmitted? Like, how old was she?
We went in for the sutures and we came out, and then day 8 was when we were admitted for significant weight loss. We were in for a couple of nights. We never got readmitted after that, but we were open to the infant feeding team, and we tried her with some vegan formulas, and she just wasn't thriving on those. She wasn't gaining the weight. And I was pumping. I was on that cycle of every 2 hours pumping, pumping, feeding, breastfeeding, giving her top-ups with a formula. It just wasn't getting her there. But it was at 2 weeks when we started the donor milk, we kind of had a light bulb moment when that was mentioned, and saw that there was this community out there through social media of women that were saying, I've got this extra milk, I've got an oversupply. So we were able to sort of tap into that.
Amazing.
And then that's when the donor milk, she started to do really well. You know,
was that frozen donor milk?
Yeah, in the most. I had one donor that we travelled, I think near Bolton. I was going over there nearly every week, and she would give me, you know, her fridge was full of the fresh milk. She was a surrogate and then was sending milk to her surrogate child down south and giving us the milk in big bottles that was fresh. And then she'd give me a load of frozen packets as well. She was amazing. God. So she was like my main donor. And then I had lots and lots of other people that were just, you know, they've got an oversupply in the freezer. They wanted room for their oven chips again, and we're like, I need to move this milk on, and I'm like, yeah, we'll have that please. So lots of frozen milk as well. But with that, we were able to feed, my first daughter was up to a year with my milk, which was about 25% of her diet, and the 75% from donor milk. And then we're at 7 months with my little girl at the moment, with me being about 50%, and we're still using frozen milk with her as well. So I'm hoping to get to a year like a sister as well on breast milk.
Is it the same donor for your second child?
No, it's different women, and it was lots of different donors for my first child. I think we used over 20 women's different breast milk, and this time with something like 15 at this point. But I go and meet all of these women, and I meet their babies and kind of talk to them, and so you kind of get a feel of, you know, who they are as well, and they just want to help, and they've got this oversupply of this milk and want to make sure it gets used, and we need it. So yeah, it's a really lovely thing, and I've met some really lovely women and amazing women that through that process.
I really wanted that system because I had a loss of weight, etc. And I looked for it, and my daughter has a real problem with lactose. We now know, but we didn't know that then. But she just was losing weight. She wasn't getting anywhere on formula, and I was really desperate, and I did relactate. I did the PowerPoint pumping and stuff. It was brutal, but it worked for me. But it did take months, and it sort of broke me as well, you know, physically. So I've got a really good friend who had a baby at the same time. She's Estonian. She said, oh, well, in Estonia, you know, everyone breastfeeds because, like, during the Soviet Union, there was no formula. It didn't exist. And I was like, so what happened to women who couldn't breastfeed? And she said, well, they just went to their sister or their friend or their neighbour or their, you know, someone be a wet nurse.
It was really lovely, especially that one donor that we saw all the time. Yeah, I couldn't thank her enough. And the women that, you know, there were some amazing women with their own breastfeeding stories that they would share with me. And I'm amazed by women. That was kind of how I felt from, and the support, you know, that they were there to, and people offering to pump, because this time we had difficulty again, obviously. And with little one, we were in hospital with jaundice this time, which really affected feeding. We had another tricky start. So I posted on a home birth local group saying, we're in hospital at the moment. Is there anyone who could offer us some milk? And people were offering to, you know, spend their time pumping for us to get milk so that we could. And I just think that's so kind and amazing that mothers are busy enough and feeding their own children and everything else that goes with being mum. So yeah, I've just been amazed by, the support of other women. It's been great.
I always thought I was a feminist till I had a child, and then I kind of realised that I was never a feminist until I had a child, you know. And in fact, this idea of a community of women, you do find that in cultures that we don't think of as being very feminist. That's one of the sort of ironies about the West, is that we feel like we're simply liberated and we've got all these rights, but actually in so much of that solidity of community amongst women. And it's really lovely to hear that you found that in this, I think, entirely modern way, but it's also very ancient.
Yeah, it's like the wet nurse thing, but it's like a modern way of doing it, isn't it, with social media. And it was a journey I didn't expect to be taking, and travelling all over collecting milk from different people. And I can understand why some people would hear about it and might think, oh, that's strange, or that wouldn't be for me. But, you know, it worked for us, and that's when she was starting to thrive, from our first daughter, when we got that donor milk. And it was the best decision we made, because the formula wasn't working out, and it saved a life, all that milk from the other women. Yeah, it was an empowering, because we made the decision, this is what we're going to do. Feeling empowered, and that you've made the choice about how you're going to do things with your birth, with your feeding journey. That's kind of what has been kind of a big lesson for me that I'd no idea about. You know, these things would become so important. I've never found something so hard in my life, breastfeeding, the first time. You know, when you put all your energy and effort and you're so sleep deprived and you're waking up, pumping every 2 hours, feeding the baby on your chest, and then giving the bottle, and then that means, I've got 20 minutes to go to sleep before I start this again. At the time, you felt broken, like, you can't, how am I even alive? You just feel absolutely exhausted. But then reflecting back, when you're out of that, you know, you can see the wood for the trees. You think, actually, yeah, that is empowering, because I did that. You know, I managed to get through that really difficult time, and I fed my baby okay. I needed a lot of help from other people, but I was able to breastfeed. So I think it has been really empowering, and I've learned that, you know, I can be very tenacious. And kind of this second time around, I think, because of feeling a bit disempowered and lost and broken at times, I really kind of prepared for a difficult journey again, and it's become much smoother because we were ready this time. Donor milk was in the freezer before she was born, just in case. And I was just in a different mindset this time around as well. I'd had COVID just before giving birth as well the first time. I think I was quite run down. But yeah, breastfeeding, I think it's just a world I'd never known about, really. I thought it would be something quite easy, but there's all this to it. I never thought about donor milk. Didn't know there'd be all these challenges. Yeah, I've learned a lot about myself, that I can be very tenacious, even if it's to the point where I'm really run down. But I think at the time with my first daughter, I just felt like, what else would I do? How else am I going to feed her? And it was really difficult to give up. I think a lot of mums feel really guilty about letting it go and giving up, even if it's to their detriment at the time or the baby's ready. It's a really difficult emotional. I never thought it would be so emotional, because I stopped breastfeeding my first at 7.5 months because I'd had really bad cracked nipples, milk blebs. I used shields for the whole journey because my nipples were so sore and I could never get her off of that. She had really bad latch. Every feed felt like pain, every single feed for my first journey. But I continued nevertheless. It was really strange, you know, that now looking back, I think, why did I do that? But at the time it just felt like I needed to keep feeding her. And I gave up at 7.5 months, my first daughter. This time it's so different. I think she was just so small. I think feeding was really difficult for her. She had a really small mouth. We just never got into that dance together. It just didn't ever kind of really work. Whereas this time, me and my youngest, we're really working, we're in sync, and my supply issue is an issue, but the feeding isn't painful. It sometimes is, but most of the time it's really good, and it's lovely to be able to, enjoy breastfeeding, which was never something I felt that would ever happen with my first journey. So it's been really healing as this time round, when the first time was really, really in the thick of it, feeling really difficult. But this time it's been really, really positive. And that's why I feel like I've had the confidence to come and do holding time.
I love to hear that. Obviously, I'm very committed to, as someone who has had, like you, lots of problems, I'm really, really committed to being honest about that. I feel like we do ourselves a real disservice if we are not honest about problems and the challenges. What women really do want is inspiration. They want to know, like, we all know what's wrong with the world, don't we? And we kind of all know, okay, like, the NHS can't be everything to everyone, and, the support teams are there and they're really dedicated. But in the end, it is kind of down to you, isn't it? A lot of the time. Having only 25% of the breast tissue available to feed, that's like such a huge obstacle that you faced. And the fact you overcame that is really remarkable and amazing to me. I didn't even realise there was such an established network of like wet nurses. That's really, really interesting. That's a really new thing. I think that must be only in the last 5 years that's really sprung up.
Yeah, there's a main group called Human Milk for Human Babies, and that's where I mostly got my milk from. But people go on there searching for milk or saying, I've got an oversupply. And lots of people, you mentioned about people having allergies. Some people have been pumping loads and stashing away in the freezer, and then they realise my baby's got an allergy, so I don't want to waste this milk. Can someone make use of it? Some people are on there just because they want to help others. There's lots of different reasons people have excess milk, and it's great. They're just posting on there saying, I'm in Manchester. Is anyone nearby? Want to come and collect? And mothers on there asking, I'm in the neonatal unit, etc. Different scenarios where they would like breast milk. And there's that and another couple of groups that I've used, but it's all been, we've never had to pay for milk. People have just donated this out of the kindness. I've offered, for things like pump parts, so, and the bags that you pump into, so that I've replaced them for the mums. But people don't want to be, they don't want presents. They just want to do this. And obviously they also feel really great that their milk's getting put to good use and is helping other babies thrive as well. So it does seem like it's something I would never have known about. But I'm really glad we found out about it and were able to tap into it. And I think the more people know about that as an option, it's great, because I think people often do just go to formula, and human milk obviously has loads of different health benefits that the formula can't always offer. So it's just something else to think about as a possible option if you are in this situation where you aren't able to fully feed or want to combination feed, or you don't have to mix up the formula. It's just there in the fridge and just warm it up in the jug and it's there ready to use. So it's also more convenient than doing formula, really. It's been life-changing is getting involved with the community of people out there. And it's ever-changing as well, because people obviously breastfeed for a certain amount of time and then they let that go. So then there'll be new mums. So that's why there's so many different donors, because it's always lots of different mums in different parts of their journey.
It's incredible. I mean, it's really lovely to hear about it.
For new mothers, I'd just say there's help out there. Don't feel like you're alone. If you're finding things tricky, somebody else will be going through it at that moment in the middle of the night at the exact same time. There's loads of different things that to breastfeeding that you wouldn't have known about until you started it. So I'd just say, seek support, whether that's through social media. There's lots of support online, or through local infant feeding, definitely. And just everything will pass as well. Things can be really tricky, and things will change. If your baby's having a really difficult time sleeping, in a few weeks it'll be totally different. It's just, you've just got to get through. You have that resilience within you. You can do it, and look back and think, wow, I did that. So just kind of keep going. And mothers are amazing. I think, I don't know what else to say.
Mothers are amazing, and you're amazing. And thank you for sharing that amazing story about free birthing and wet nursing. It's really unique take on it. And I wonder if it's a sign of the times, you know, if we're going to be hearing more about
with being wet nurses, like that's a different thing in a way, isn't it?
Oh,
like if to feed,
yeah.
I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah,
but like culturally, it was interesting to hear, you know, about families supporting each other. I think that's great. You know, families or friends that can feed. But yeah, it's a really different way of doing it, because obviously in the past we wouldn't have had that ability, but now with the internet we can connect with people who have got that freezer stash that you could use that they need to move on. So it's hopefully it's just a different option for people to consider when they're thinking about feeding their babies. I do feel from this project it does feel like I'm getting to explore things that maybe I've just kind of put away, but actually trying to look at it and reframe it. And yeah, it is empowering looking back. We have gone from such a tricky time and it's going really well now. So yeah, it is an empowering thing. So yeah, thank you for letting me be part of the project.
Well, thank you for volunteering. It's been lovely talking to you, Alison.
Thank you for listening to the Holding Time podcast. We're grateful to everyone involved in this project, including our partners and funders, Bradford District Care Trust and Arts Council England and Better Place Bradford, and all the incredible mothers and families who made it all possible. For more information, visit holdingtime.org. The link is in the episode description. Please like, follow or subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. And consider sharing this podcast to help raise awareness and support for breastfeeding.